I am Vitold and I'm very excited to go through with this particular comparison of a new Triumph Tiger 1200 GT and a new, or rather refreshed, not long ago, KTM 1290 Super Adventure S. This KTM is the version of a Super Adventure that has a 19-inch front rim. It's got electronically adjustable suspension, a front radar and some other things on board which are different than on the R version of this bike. A similar story is present in the case of this Triumph, which in the Tiger 1200 GT version is also different than Tiger 1200 Rally version. That one has a 21-inch front rim. This GT has also a 19-inch rim one. So in a way, it's a direct competition for the S from the KTM. If you'd like to know all the differences between the versions of this KTM and this Triumph, later head to my detailed videos about the differences, which I linked in the description for you guys. Here we will go through a number of different and very important categories to judge an adventure bike in. Every category has its winner or not, and I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, as I do not own a Tiger nor a Super Adventure, so there is no bias behind my words. I've also ridden every other motorcycle in the big adventure category available on the market today, so you may be sure that I've done my homework properly on gathering not only data but my own experiences with those motorcycles. This is what my channel is about. Alright, without further ado, let me start with the first category, because both of these bikes are really interesting and could be put side by side by many of you. The first point is engine and performance, and this may be the closest contest ever on top, as Triumph Tiger 1200 has an inline 3-cylinder engine with 1160 cubic centimeters of displacement, with 150 horsepower and 130 newtons of torque. It makes an impression here. KTM has a V2 engine, 2-cylinder engine, with 1301 cubic centimeters of displacement, 160 horsepower and 138 newton-meters of torque. So a bit more of everything. Tiger is a quick bike that pulls surprisingly well from the lowest RPM, and then it smoothly delivers more and more the higher you go. KTM behaves in a similar way, but it feels way quicker. Yes, KTM's engine is like a jet engine that is unstoppable here. It's powerful from the bottom and all the way to the red line. It is making the Super Adventure pump adrenaline straight into your body. Now, both bikes are flexible and likely they are overall very close here, which is a great assessment of them both. KTM vibrates at the highest RPM, just like any engine. Triumph starts earlier at just around 5,000 RPM, and it's getting quite significant there, but that's when you keep it steady. KTM is not vibrating that much when you're just keeping steady RPM at, let's say, 6,000 RPM. Triumph is doing it a bit worse, so KTM would be a bit better at the same time here. Both bikes present decent heat management. Triumph might be a little bit better here. Now, if you don't push either of these so much, the heat is totally not an issue. So yes, two fantastic engines, yet the winner can be one here, and the more fun and the more encouraging to play with is KTM's powertrain, and this is our winner here. However, Triumph is really nice in here too. I feel like I should state that very clearly here. Now, handling, and I'm dividing this into low speed handling and high speed handling. KTM does well at higher speeds, as it's pretty neutral there, it does what you want it to, and it doesn't fight you that much. Triumph is very similar, while perhaps being a bit easier to change directions when at a certain lean angle already, and I would say that Triumph is really good here and might have an edge over the KTM. At lower speeds, KTM that I was riding really did not enjoy being anywhere near 30-40 kilometers per hour. Getting between the cars was risky, as the bike didn't feel precise enough, and I had to be very focused and very careful not to hit anyone's mirror, which I succeeded in, thankfully. Maneuvering wasn't super bad, but in comparison to Triumph, it could have been much better. Tiger 1200 in the GT, and only in the GT variant, so not in the Rally, is again very neutral there at low speeds. It is very well balanced, and it's following your command the way you want it. It's not like you're riding at super low speeds totally effortlessly, like on let's say 2-3 other bikes that might be better in this segment, but really at the point that I would not wish for more. That's totally fine the way this Triumph does it. Actually, one of those two to three bikes would be KTM's R version, which is much better at low speeds than the S version. So Tiger 1200 GT is visibly more rider friendly at lower speeds, while feeling a bit more happy also at higher speeds. So overall, it wins here in the category of handling. Let's move to suspension, and both of these bikes have electronically adjustable suspensions, which might also be likely 2 out of 3 most advanced systems in the segment, which makes it very interesting. And you know what? It makes it also pretty close. Right at the beginning, you may notice that if you go for an upgraded package for the KTM, you're getting a few more options that may actually be worth it. Tiger 1200 GT has a super wide range of adjustment from super hard to super soft. Soft is incredibly comfortable and just a tiny bit floaty, while hard can only be used on, let's say, totally flat roads. That's how stiff it can get. But the bike is always pretty composed. KTM also has a very wide range of adjustment, just maybe a tiny bit less, which doesn't make you lose that much, as it only applies to extreme settings on a Tiger, which might hardly be ever used. So not having them like you're not having them on a KTM still gives you pretty much everything that you might want, I think. KTM has simpler adjustment, but instead it gives you separate access to preload and activating or deactivating its anti-dive system if you go for this extra package, which does do something in terms of preventing the front end from diving. The bike still dives, but not as much as the Triumph, which always behaves like a boat during a storm when using its front brake. But I appreciate its easy step-by-step adjustment with many levels that you can choose from depending on how you feel. You don't have it that simple, you don't have it that clear, you don't have that many options in a KTM to choose from. So to sum up, I feel that Tiger can give you more in terms of adjusting the stiffness, while KTM gives you extra useful options. So it's a tough one. So let's take into account that KTM has 22.4 centimeters of ground clearance against Tiger's 20 centimeters of ground clearance. Both bikes have exactly 20 centimeters of suspension travel, so very close in here as well. And I felt actually more comfortable on a Triumph overall. Keeping it all in mind and considering KTM's useful anti-dive system that definitely does a better job than Triumph's front suspension, I'm actually going to give it to the KTM here, because that thing is significant and it prevents you from getting the annoyance that you are having with that front diving so much in the Triumph. Seat and position comfort. Now, foot pegs in Tiger are located exactly where a person like myself at 183 centimeters tall or 6 feet tall would like them to be, providing at the same time a comfortable knee angle and good access to rear brake and a gear lever. KTM has the foot pegs pretty high, which makes the knee angle a bit less enjoyable. The position on both bikes seems quite similar, and it's nicely upright in terms of your upper body. Where the real difference comes into play is the seat. The comparison can be pretty accurate here, as both have seats adjustable in 2 settings, in 2 positions, 85 and 87 centimeters from the ground, but the cushioning is a night and day difference. Tiger has a soft and comfortable, to me, seat, while Super Adventure S has a torture mat instead of the seat that would make my butt sore after 40 minutes of riding already. I would appreciate every break that I could take from it, which is not the way you want it on your beloved motorcycle. Tiger has a so much better seat in my opinion, and so it takes the win home here. About wind protection, in the next point, my Super Adventure S was for some reason equipped with a shorter windshield from the R version, which obviously gives no real wind protection, so I cannot tell you what it would be like with its original windshield to compare it with Triumph's, so no result here. But now in the category of brakes of these bikes, I can present you a very specific result. And first of all, both bikes have strong brakes. KTM's rear brake is usable, and so is Triumph's, let's say with an exception of its ABS being pretty sensitive, so it's a bit worse, let's say. KTM seems to have it done better in the rear. In the front, there's also a difference in how easy the brakes are to use in both bikes. In KTM, you immediately get a hold of it and you can use it pretty much naturally. The brake grabs hard and there are no complaints here from me. In Tiger 1200, the front brake requires a lot of time to get used to, as it's got a strange way of operation in which it only starts grabbing at some point, and then it does it super suddenly, and that's throwing the bike's front end rapidly down. It compresses the front suspension. This is not what you want in your bike to do. It's a pretty nervous and hard situation to operate the bike in, and you may get used to it and get the better feel, but once you get less focused on the road and operating it and just grab the lever quicker in the initial squeeze, it will act very rapidly. So because of this and a less effective rear brake, KTM takes the win here. Not to mention that with this anti-dive system engaged, braking on a KTM overall is more enjoyable as the bike stays flatter and easier to steer when braking, and that is another advantage as a whole. Drivetrain, and another difference between the two, as KTM uses chain drive while Triumph went with shaft drive. Chains on those KTMs can stretch quickly like an 18-year-old boy for the first time in a strip club. A chain generally is a less comfortable solution in every way I can imagine, except maybe for those strip club situations. But yeah, for now, Triumph wins this one with a huge advantage, especially for those that are planning on touring a lot and would get annoyed having to spray the chain every now and then during their trips, check the tension, plan when to replace it, not to get caught in the middle, and so on. Now, comparing fuel tanks, you're getting 23 liters in a KTM and 20 liters in a Tiger 1200 GT in the standard or Pro trim, or you can get 30 liters in an Explorer trim of the GT, also same applies to the Rally. Triumph gives you more flexibility as a model, so it wins. Now, the next category is weight, and both bikes are around 240 to 245 kilograms depending on specific equipment, so they are quite close. None feels overwhelming when at a standstill, but also not super light like a feather. So this is not a super close call, and it's going to be more about how they feel when riding. Low speed control and balance have a lot to say here, and remembering the Tiger being better here than Super Adventure S, I'm leaning towards giving it a win. I feel that it's fair. Thinking about it, it does appear this Tiger to me as a more approachable motorcycle when sitting on and with dealing with it. I qualify it as an advantage in the way we perceive weight of a given bike. So it's got a lot to do with the center of gravity, which seems slightly lower in the Tiger 1200. It doesn't necessarily need to be, as this is my own subjective feeling, but that's how I see it, giving Tiger a little advantage here and overall a win in this category. Now, the tech. So which bike is more advanced technologically? Which one feels more modern? While modern being a compliment in this particular case here. In terms of equipment, both bikes can have keyless ignition with keyless fuel caps, which is huge for me. I do like that, I do enjoy it, I do pay attention to it. Both have cornering front lights, electronically adjustable suspensions, backlit switches, quick shifter, can have quick shifter, and even 2 heated seats, so it's a super close match. KTM may have a slightly more advanced suspension with that anti-dive system, but Triumph has a drive shaft, which is a huge technological advantage to me. Then KTM has a front radar that allows it for using adaptive cruise control. Some of you guys like it. I would not want exactly to use that on a motorcycle. I do like that in a car. Tiger 1200 in an Explorer version could secure a certain advantage, as it can have rear radar, which then can enable blind spot monitoring system that warns you via lights in your mirrors about vehicles in your blind spots on the left and on the right side. It can do that, but only the Explorer version has it, and it is far actually from being perfect. Why? I am explaining in my full review of the Rally version, which I actually linked for you guys in the description. There's also a full honest review of the GT version if you would like to see all the details in a dedicated review. Same goes for the KTM, for actually both KTMs, S and R. So I would say that there is a slight advantage there for the Triumph comparing the radars. But let's take a look at their onboard computers that you're operating through the displays. Here is where KTM demolishes the Triumph. The layout is so much more pleasant, Menus are way easier to understand and to navigate. It is also much less cramped and so much more clear in the KTM. A point lost by the Tiger is also in a way that its animations work, and they are choppy like 20 years ago in a computer game that was run on a 2-week hardware. It doesn't really happen anymore, but there in this bike it does. KTM adds a fantastic addition of visual explanations of certain options that you can play with, and I would sum it up by saying that Triumph went a bit further with tech advancements, giving us shaft drive and a more useful radar. Now KTM scores in suspension and modern feeling thanks to the display. Let's let you guys decide what matters more to you and which one you consider more tech advanced. So please let us know in the comments, and that's how we will judge this. And the sound, we've got two very different potentials here, but somehow similar results. Tiger 1200 has a 3-cylinder engine, and so it sounds similar to most 4-cylinder engines until it doesn't, which is at the highest RPM when accelerating. It produces that mighty and powerful growl that's very enjoyable to the ear, at least to mine. And that's the result of having 3, not 4 cylinders, and I like it. At idle, it's horribly quiet, and that's a downside. Actually, the same story goes at idle for KTM. It gets a bit better at high RPM. As it gets to breathe, it starts breathing, but the stock exhaust really kills most of the potential for sound that this engine has. Still, throughout the range, you can hear that KTM's V2, and the melody of any V twin engine is nicer to my ears than any 3 or 4 cylinder engines. Speaking of potential, getting an aftermarket exhaust, KTM will sound awesome, while Tiger will sound just better than it already sounds being stock. So the win overall from me goes to the KTM. Since it's more consistent, I just prefer the V2 sound. About off-roading, I do not touch upon that, as I wouldn't feel comfortable, and just it doesn't seem right for me to take them out there. Maybe if I had 3 of those in my garage so that I could demolish one and still have some to ride and have someone bring it back home on the track later on. They're too heavy, too large, too expensive for me to do that, but if I had to choose, I would feel more comfortable off-roading on a KTM, I think. There is more pull low down in the RPM range because of the engine. There's more ground clearance and a bit more orange on the sides. That would be more encouraging than a sports bike sounding Tiger being taken off the road. Design-wise, I feel that the top Tiger 1200 is too similar to other Tigers, especially the 900, and it kind of looks not that exciting to me. On the other hand, I really like the way KTM Super Adventure S looks with its powerful line, sort of heavy appearance, but at the same time not bulky, but rather strong. And definitely closer to my taste and my books it gets. A win here. And one before the last, so price and value for money. Tiger 1200 GT can be bought for less than the KTM, for which you would have to pay currently 16% more in my case, in my market. Upgrading both with some options that we would want to get anyway, which would in fact mean going for a Tiger 1200 GT Pro, you would still have to pay 6 to 7% more for the same KTM. And the question is, if it's that much better, if it's better at all, to justify its higher price. I would say that it's quite controversial to agree with that, in considering a shaft drive, considering any sort of choice, as we've got a standard Tiger at 1200 GT, we've got a Pro trim, and then we've got the Explorer trim, so we've got some choices. I believe that the Tiger wins price-wise, and it also wins value-wise. It may be giving more value for money exactly because of the shaft drive, which is huge, a piece of engineering, I think. In other areas, Tiger isn't really lacking anything that would justify it having to be cheaper than a KTM. So yeah, Triumph for the win here. The last category of comparison is X Factor, and this is where we forget all the numbers. Tiger 1200 has a nice and exciting engine that sounds really cool at higher RPM. I'm not finding other areas actually that would make my heart beat so much faster. Maybe that front brake that can wake up the dead, suddenly engaging like crazy. But yeah, it's not the X factor that we are looking for. KTM, on the other hand, has something more that I feel is exciting to me. It's not only amazing performance at all times, which we gotta consider. It's parts of orange paint, it's the fancy systems, but also it's that crazy fun display that makes you realize that someone really cared to see the rider at the end. And I like that, I appreciate that. I see dedication and a will to go a step further. They didn't have to do it, nobody else does it basically. Now with an exhaust that would be replaced with an aftermarket one, this thing will sound like a beast. The tough guy's image is cool too of a KTM, and obviously until you hear the stories about reliability, as it's also not the kind of X factor that you would want. But KTM feels like something just more crazy, something more exciting than a Triumph, which is kind, which is proper, but the X factor in my definition, or rather of my definition, definitely goes to Super Adventure S here. So which bike would I choose and why? I do believe that most riders could appreciate what Tiger 1200 offers more than the way of life with Super Adventure S. Tiger doesn't really do anything badly, except loading its display for ages and braking with a front brake, which is, problematic, needs to get used to. KTM has some areas that you may realize that you wanted it to be improved at, like handling, like chain being there, like the seat and reliability that I actually don't only consider to be legends. It looks like there is something going on. So I feel it's a more risky move to go with a KTM, but I think that's what I would do here. I just love the engine, I love the craziness and its style, and I would replace the seat, I would install an aftermarket exhaust, and hopefully manage to find a bike with a long-lasting warranty, as I don't think I would put all that money on the table for a new bike myself, considering what can go wrong and the disappointment and so on. I actually would probably go with the R version overall after enjoying the hell out of it, and you can see that in my full honest review of the bike and also in a video where I compare the S and R and tell you which one does what better. There are very surprising conclusions. Now these videos are linked for you guys in the description, so a lot of respect to Triumph. It's a very solid choice. Now if you'd like to see a full picture of a Tiger 1200 and a KTM, head to my detailed reviews of these bikes in the description and subscribe for more comparisons coming.